Hey, it's the Tim Anderson podcast. I'm the host, Tim. That's the name on the podcast. It's mine, and that's mine. How you doing? I'm good to see you guys. I'm Tim. I'm so excited to have her back. She's back from Michigan. She's been doing the holiday stuff too, but we're going to have a lot to talk about tonight. My good friend Allison. Good chance to catch up with Allison Wanchoba from AllisonWanchoba.medium.com. If you haven't had a chance to read her stuff, please do. But she's also my dear friend Allison. How you doing, dear?
So happy to be back. Thanks for having me on. Oh, we got a lot to talk about, don't we?
We sure do. I mean, my gosh, we got so much content. But you had spent a few months in Michigan. Did you ever feel like staying?
It's very similar to Minnesota in some ways and very much like Michigan in other ways. I was in Kalamazoo, Michigan when I was over there. And for context, Kalamazoo is a college town. For those who live in Minnesota, it's very similar to something like St. Cloud.
There's worse places to be.
Yeah. St. Cloud, but a lot more blue. In terms of the demographic, in terms of their political leanings. At any rate, Kalamazoo was under so much road construction when I was over there. There is a main drag there called Westnedge Avenue, and they were like replacing some underground city pipes. And of course, that was the way that I had to go to work. But I made it work, we love that our infrastructure is being replaced and refixed and all of that in our country. And at any rate, I'm glad to be back in Minnesota, though. It's good to be with family. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you had a good. Looks like you had a good family gathering. Good Christmas. Good everything. You guys did a big bash like you always do.
Yeah. So my brother lives in Fargo. I have two brothers, one in Fargo, one in Minneapolis, and on Christmas Day, my brother in Fargo was visiting his wife's family out in rural North Dakota and said, well, after that, we will go down to Minneapolis for that Christmas. So my family decided to do Christmas actually yesterday as of recording, not on actual Christmas Day where, we still had a little bit of family time and all of that, but we didn't do any presents or anything like that.
And your brothers are identical twins, right? So they needed to get as far away from each other as possible after they graduated high school, I would imagine.
They certainly like being their own men, but it's so funny how even apart, their lives are so similar. They both have engineering degrees in different fields, but they do. Their fiancé wives are both born on March 10th.
No, now you're getting weird here. That's really?
That's different years. They're 97 and 99, I believe.
That would be sick if they were same years or like same towns, same everything. What if they were twins too? Oh, how sick would that have been?
I know. Yeah, but no, we always like to say that, like March 27th for the boys, March 10th for the girls. No, that was not planned. My brother got married this year in October, and his brother, his identical twin brother, was his best man. And
kind of obligated, aren't you?
You gotta.
I think you have to. I think it's like you don't have any. Your best friends are like, yeah, sorry, but it's got to be the identical twin.
Even another brother, I'd be like, no, him.
Yeah, no, I would. No, my brother wasn't in my wedding party. I love my brother, but he wasn't in my wedding party. If he was identical, he'd probably have to be, though.
Probably, yeah. Anyway, funny story. So, the table, the head table where the wedding party is, and the bride and groom and everything. My brother, the groom, left to go to the bathroom or something. So it was just the rest of the party, my brother, the groom's men next to the bride. And everyone at the table had these like bells, right? To, ring like kiss the bride. One table, when my brother, the groom, was away, started ringing these bells, thinking that. And
I love it.
My brother, the groom, tried to convince them, no, I'm not Eric. I'm not Eric.
That was on purpose. They were doing that to see if they could figure it out. And I could just imagine your brother in the bathroom going, the bells. Oh my God, no, they think I'm there. It's like a romantic comedy plot.
It was cute. It was a really cute moment.
Don't you feel like, why hasn't there been like a Hallmark movie or a rom-com made with that premise? How do we not get that done? Like, we got to get, you're a writer, Allison. This is the kind of stuff that you should be writing, right? You'd be in Hollywood tomorrow with that plot.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
I have a gut feeling that that's not in your script repertoire right now, Allison, that you're trying to write deeper stuff than that. But hey, what the hell? Hallmark pays. So let me start here with you. So I went back and I listened to our NFL division winners prediction pod because I wanted to see how we did. And I'm just going to come out and apologize to my listeners because I don't know how out of balance I am until I go back and listen to these pods. Like I tend to think that, I'm pretty level-headed and that I see it pretty clearly. And then I go back and listen to these kind of pods where I have to make predictions and put my name on it. And I'm an idiot. God, there's just so much crap that I get wrong every year. And we're going to have to come up with that. Although I'll say this about you, Allison. I thought you did way better than me. You did way better than me when it came to division predictions.
I'll have to see what the notes were again really quickly. Because
I'll tell you who you had.
One. Okay.
Yeah, I can tell you who you had. I got it ready. Here's who you had.
Lovely.
Here's who you had. You had Miami in the East. That's not great. That's a bad pick. But I had the Jets. That's a worse pick. All right. So you get that one. We both had Jacksonville in the South.
Dear God.
But you
Jacksonville.
But you wonder if in a different world, like if we play this season out 5 times and Lawrence doesn't get hurt or something like that, maybe it's different. But we both had Jacksonville. We're both going to get the Chiefs. We got that right.
Well, yeah.
You're going to get Baltimore because you took Baltimore. I took Cincinnati, who's in a fight right now to try to get into the playoffs here. They're playing the Broncos as we speak. We both took Philadelphia. So you got that one. But then this is still one that's kind of up in the air because you took Atlanta. I took Tampa Bay. And then we both took San Francisco. All in all, you did better than me. But here's where we both got it wrong. And we both took Detroit. We both had Minnesota winning like 5 games. Like we just totally screwed that up.
Everyone did. And that one just aged like fine wine. Like if you're going to get something wrong, we got it wrong in the best possible way. Not only did they not only win 5 games, but they are blowing everyone out of the water and are on track to being potentially the first team ever in NFL history to win 14 games in their season and not get the top seed. Them or Lions, let's hope it. I'm just kidding.
One of those 2 teams is going to lose that. You're right, 100%. Somebody's going to win 14 games. Somebody's going to win 14 and have to go on the road for every playoff game. That's pretty incredible. That's really an incredible statistic to think about. Let me ask you this. What do you think we need to do differently when it comes to preseason predictions? Like, do we need to just throw out the previous year, or do we have to look what is the thing that I'm missing? I've got a couple of ideas, but I wonder what you're thinking about.
Well, the teams that we egregiously got wrong are wrong because of a few factors that we couldn't have necessarily predicted, like injuries. Like the 49ers got their butts kicked with injuries. There was always a key player who was just out. Christian McCaffrey was out for a spell. Yep. Wasn't Kittle out for a spell too? Like, I don't know if he's still out.
Ayuk blew out his knee after he held out the entire preseason.
Yeah. And it's just like, well, you can't predict injuries, but maybe you can account for them because this is football. And every team, last year was an interesting year in that every single there were so many starting quarterbacks who were injured last year, which made it for a very interesting, like, these are the backups kind of year. And we were thinking, God, I don't want that to be repeated. How about everyone is just, what would happen if everyone was healthy? Now, we also didn't account for something like the Super Bowl hangover. We didn't think that, every team who loses, at least, has a spell after that they just, they're trying to get back into that rhythm and are just not really. You saw it with the Rams. You saw it with, like,
the only team
they
that
didn't
doesn't have that, you're
lose.
right, is
They
the only
didn't
team is
lose,
the
granted.
Chiefs.
The only one is the Chiefs.
When the
and
Chiefs
they,
lost to Tampa, that was it. That was the only one.
yeah. I didn't mean to say the Rams in the sense that they lost the Super Bowl. You know what I mean, though.
Bengals. Yeah, Bengals were that way. You
Yeah.
can definitely look at the Eagles. The Eagles last year were not very good, right? They got to the playoffs, but they struggled with that post Super Bowl hangover, as you mentioned.
They were part of that was the coach too. I mean, people were talking about Sirianni's calls, and they had Matt Patricia as the defensive coordinator, and that just did not gel well. And you are seeing the positive change of the Eagles adjusting after their crappy end last year. Like, they're also a 12-3 team now because they lost to the Commanders of all people this Sunday.
But
But
Hurts got hurt. I mean, he got
I
the
know,
concussion.
I know.
I mean, they got Kenny Pickett playing this Saturday.
Yeah.
Or Sunday, which couldn't happen to a nicer group of guys. But we
they're
should have
still
seen it coming, though,
good.
with the Eagles. We should have seen the Eagles coming, though. We did pick them to win the division, but we should have seen that happen quicker. Like, Saquon Barkley. They've got Kellen Moore, real offensive coordinator. We should see these signs. The same thing with San Francisco. Like, we should have looked at it and said, okay, they lost the Super Bowl. Ayuk held out everybody wants more money. The window looks like it's closing. You can only do this so many times, right, before you kind of run out of steam. And now you got to think about, are you going to pay Brock Purdy? You got all this stuff that's going on around it, and it just didn't feel like it was a logical thing. So I don't know. I should have seen that coming. In Minnesota, I guess you're right. It's a pleasant surprise. It really is a pleasant surprise. I'm trying to figure out how either Vegas, but me as well, got it so wrong in August. Like, what didn't I see in August that ended up playing itself out? Because Ryan didn't think the Vikings were going to win 14 games, but he had them as a better team than I did. And I don't know. I'm thinking I misjudged the coach. I didn't think the coach was as good as he is. Yeah, is that fair? Or Jefferson, same thing?
I think there is, truth to that. Because last year, they did not make it to the playoffs. And they were hit with injuries big time. So we got to see, like, midway through the season after Cousins was hurt, our backup situation. And our backup situation was not good. And that is something that you do blame to a certain extent the coaching staff. And I say to a certain extent because sometimes quarterbacks are, you don't know how well they adapt to a system behind the scenes and all of that. So you don't want to get that too much credit. But we did not see on paper that Kevin O'Connell could build a proper quarterback. We saw a little smidgen of it, a little glimmer of it with the Dobbs situation, but then he fell off the tracks very quickly.
He did.
But we're seeing how Sam Darnold is playing. We did not expect 13, potentially 14 games out of him.
You're right about that. I didn't give Darnold the credit. I'm starting to think that here's my new theory heading into next season that we should consider, Allison. First of all, we never bet against a good coach. Like, this year, betting against Denver, Sean Payton, bad idea. Like, that's just a bad idea. We kicked them out week 2 of the Eliminator. What a mistake. I mean, now we're fighting for our lives. We're rooting for the freaking Bengals to win tonight over the Broncos and then get lucky next week to hope that we can pull this Eliminator off. But you can't bet against good coaches, and you can't bet on bad coaches. Like, we should have known. I should have known. You don't bet on Robert Saleh to win the division.
No.
Like, you don't do that. A year after the quarterback was 41 years old, comes off an Achilles injury, you don't bet on the coach that hasn't won anything. You don't bet on that guy. Like, you don't bet on Gerard Mayo. You don't bet on these guys that haven't won anything and haven't done anything. So it's like, we have to be able to identify the bad coaches and say, we are no longer betting on anything there. Like the Bears, people who thought the Bears were going to win 10 games, all we had to do, and I was one of these idiots, all we had to do was say, who's the coach? Oh, it's the same guy as last year, and he's not a good coach. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Bet against that guy.
Talk about a historically bad coach, though, for the Bears. Like, how bad you have to be the first coach ever in Bears history to be kicked out mid-season. I mean, do you think you should have? Yeah, that was.
It was an egregious. I mean,
yeah.
Here's the problem with firing.
Too.
Here's the message, though. This is what I'm seeing: is that if you're going to, I think this is my new theory on firing coaches mid-season. I don't know if you think about this. You can't fire the coach, though, unless you either A, have somebody in the building who is really ready to be that guy, or you go outside the organization to a guy who is standing by to jump in, and every coach stays in their normal position in their normal spot. Because what has happened is in Chicago, they fired the OC, the head coach, and they moved up the same guy to both positions. He's not up to the task. Like, that guy's just not up to the task of being the head coach. And in New York, the Jets, Jeff Ulbricht's like the worst interim coach I've ever seen in my life. Like, so now they have there's no quality coaching anywhere to be found on those rosters. And part of me is just like, gosh, if they would have gone out, I'm not saying Rex Ryan's a great coach, but I'm saying you could have called Rex Ryan at the Jets and said, just come in and be the head coach. Go to press conferences, do the meetings, keep our coaching staff intact, and run things accordingly. And I think they're better. I don't think they go to the playoffs, but I think they're better. They're certainly not what they are right now. So I'm thinking that we got to reevaluate when we fire coaches midseason. What's the plan? What does it look like?
Yeah, and that's one of those things where it feels like common sense. You know, you don't fire anyone in the middle of any period if it's like a seasonal type job. And okay, I know that NFL coaches is a year-round kind of thing, but the meat and potatoes of the job where you don't have any days off, it's not like if you fire an office worker where, okay, you have some leeway to figure out your next step. No, the next game needs to have a coach. Now, you hear about like Pete Carroll wanting to step in as the head coach for the Bears.
I heard that,
which I think would be interesting. And I think if you have someone who has been a head coach before, who left on good terms, relatively good terms, like, you're not getting a Josh McDaniels, but
no,
someone like a Pete Carroll, I could see being a respectable replacement for Eberflus. Now, with all of that said, on your point about the parameters for, kicking out a coach mid-season and, thinking about our ranking and all of that before in the preseason, you say about looking at the coach, I say also look at the ownership, because you look at the Bears and you look at the Jets too. And all of these decisions were because of who the ownership was. Like, could you possibly see something like a mid-season coach firing, let's say in Buffalo? Let's just say hypothetically, Sean McDermott absolutely tanks. Maybe he does a Matt Eberflus, time mismanagement moment during a game in the middle of the, again, hypothetically. I don't think they would fire a coach mid-season without doing something like, okay, we have someone who can replace it. They would be able to at least foresee and like look around because they're good owners,
You're onto that. That point's well taken, is the ownership side of it, right? By all accounts, the McCaskies are, they're not knee jerk per se, but they're also kind of old school. They're old fashioned owners. They're not like real new school owners. And by all accounts, Woody Johnson's an egomaniac and he's out of control. A lot of people think he's the worst owner in the league, that he's got his teenage kids calling the shots, yelling and screaming at players and stuff. It's like, man, if that's not just elitism at its finest, I don't know what is. There's people who are rooting like, hey, maybe he'll go be the ambassador to England again or something, so his brother can take over and we can actually be run like, I don't know, decently. But we'll have to. You're right though. The ownership has to be considered. If the owners are unpredictable and the owners are not stable, or they're not in a position where where they spend way too much time listening to radio stations and fans and stuff like that, then this is what you get. This is clearly, the Bears firing was clearly a fans thing. After that Thanksgiving Day loss, like, the fans would have absolutely rioted if he kept his job. They had no choice, I think, but to fire him there. But in other cases, I think that the Saleh firing, I don't think Saleh was a very good coach, and I think he deserved to be fired. But maybe I would have let him coach the whole season, because I don't see what's behind him as anything good. All right, little football stuff there. We're going to Vikings Packers tomorrow. I'll probably get Allison's prediction before we leave this pod tonight. But first, let's transition. Next topic. You've been watching a lot of NBA this year?
Yes, I have. In fact, last night, the Timberwolves were playing the Rockets, and they made their biggest last-minute fourth-quarter comeback since 2003. Like, in the last 4 minutes of the game, they overcame a 16-point deficit. I saw that. Yeah.
They might you might be the only one watching the games. I have not. First of all, the Wolves, I don't know. Is it too early to judge the Towns trade, in your opinion? Do we need to give it a half season? Do we need to go 3/4 of a season? Like, how long do we go before we start to look at this trade and say, all right, was this trade good for our team long term, or was this something that was short-sighted? I don't know. What do you think?
Here's what I'm saying. First off, Minnesota fans in general have always been very knee-jerk. And there are already, fans going after on Reddit, on Facebook, and all that, saying that this is the worst trade in NBA history. And even some talking heads are saying that, let's not get carried away. I know, but even Kevin Garnett is stepping in and saying they traded the wrong big man. They should have traded Rudy Gobert instead of Towns. And the reason people are saying that is not just because of Towns as a player in terms of his skill, but Towns in terms of his chemistry with the Timberwolves. Like, when he left, it felt like the chemistry of the players just took a nosedive. And I think it's December. It's not, I wouldn't say it's early in the season. We're going to start, January next week. But it's also not like late. Like, here's the thing that's kind of annoying about basketball, in my opinion, is that every team, you look at the standings, you look at the rankings of everything, some teams play more games than others at a certain period of time. It's not like with it's not like with football, where, save for your bye weeks, okay, every team has played the same amount of games minus a game at a certain point until you catch up, towards the end.
Sure.
But you're off by a game. But in the NBA, you can be off from other teams by more than a couple games. Like, it's still close, but it's still like, okay, how are we determining some of this? Because it's so close. With that being said, the Towns trade. Let me get back on topic. The Towns trade. I would not be surprised entirely if they brought Towns back into Minnesota.
That'll never happen.
But you don't
No
think
chance.
that'll okay. Well,
No, never. New York's happy. New York
they are
loves this trade.
happy. They are happy,
It's been
but
great for them.
it'll be dependent on if Towns is happy and if he wants to go. Moving on.
I will say Towns does sound like sad. Like
He
I've read a
definitely.
lot of his.
Well, I was at that Knicks game. In person, and I saw them blow the Wolves out of the water. And then Towns at a press conference later saying, I was trying to send a message to Minnesota, like you shouldn't have gotten rid of me. Here's where the tire is going to hit the pavement on this trade. Last year, Towns's performance in the playoffs, and this has been a pattern, went under in the playoffs. He didn't play as well as he had been in the regular season during the playoffs. And are we going to see that again with the Knicks from Towns this year, assuming they go to the playoffs? Could the Wolves go to the playoffs without Towns? It's not looking like a shoo-in by any means.
Certainly not. They got to play a lot better.
But I think they could. And we're still, have to remember that we're still looking at the trade deadline in February where moves can be made. And again, chemistry is a big factor in how well we recover. We get into these stints of like, we're not like the Warriors where not only are we mid, but we are losing, way more than we should, even as a mid team. I think, the longest loss streak that we've had as a team this year was like a 4-loss streak, which isn't good, but you're not looking at like 5, 6, 7 loss streaks or anything like that. Like it could be a lot worse.
It could. I mean, they're not 10 and 30. I mean, they're not that. I mean, but
no.
You're supposed to be a team that you went to the Western Conference Finals a year ago, and you make a trade that you think is going to be the thing that gets you over the hump. You get, a power forward that can do something for you, and DiVincenzo who can shoot from the outside, and you think, well, these are the pieces, these are the things, and you're worse defensively, you are worse offensively, and you got Ant, who, in my opinion, everybody was just giving Ant his flowers last year, like just singing his praises. He's the face of the NBA. He's the next guy. And it's like, I don't see that yet. I just don't. I mean, I think Edwards is he's a great talent and a very good basketball player. But when people started throwing out top 5 player in the league stuff to me, I was like, nah, I'm not seeing that. Got a long way to go before you're that. And, case in point, he's in there ripping everybody. He's like, our offense is crap. This is crap, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, you're the star. Figure it out. Maybe get Gobert and Randall in the same room and get that together. DiVincenzo needs more shots. Maybe make that happen. Maybe stop shooting, 25 threes a game. Maybe get to the line every now and again like a great player does. But I'm not ripping Ant here, but it's like everybody wants to give Ant a pass and put this all on Finch or put this all on DiVincenzo or Randall. And it's like, no, the star player has to, if he's going to get all the praise when things are good, he's got to get some heat when it's not good. Like, that's just the way I feel about it. Same thing with Philly. Embiid wants all the joy when things are great, but nobody can criticize Embiid when it's not going great. And it's like, well, you know what, man? You signed the contract to make that money. This is how this works. Like, this is how it goes. LeBron doesn't like to be criticized. Well, that's too bad, LeBron. That's too bad. That's what happens when you're a star player. You get criticized when things don't go well because you're supposed to be a great player.
Yeah.
So that's my thought there.
For sure. And I agree. I think there are a lot of factors to talk about, like to go into that. I agree that this year Anthony Edwards is not like blowing people out of the water. But we also have to remember that he was in the Olympics in August. So there's a factor there. And you are seeing that across the board, all of the players who were in the Olympics last, August are not playing as well as they used to, like the year prior. Like, they're not awful. It's not a huge nosedive off, but you see that it has affected them a little bit, namely someone like LeBron, which, he's older and all that. Anyway, criticism, back on that. There is a lot to unpack here about how the modern NBA is losing big time in ratings and why that is happening. And the common discourse I'm seeing is that the players are too soft. They're not as competitive anymore. They're not as hard on defense as they used to be, which to some extent I agree. I don't know how blanket statement we should make that, because I do think especially the European players like Jokic do play hard. Like, they do care about the game. Anyway.
He doesn't play great defense, but you're right. He does
But
play. I mean, yeah, he doesn't. He plays hard. He absolutely does.
Exactly. I think they put the effort in. So with that said, I think the ratings has to do with people talking about it being a 3-point shooter contest now, how there isn't as much variety on the court on where we're shooting the ball. And I'm seeing like the placement of everything compared to like, from the 90s and stuff. And I agree to that point. I also think that we need to up the narratives of everything. We are, talking about these new players like Anthony Edwards, but you think about someone like Michael Jordan, who got his start in the late 80s, but didn't really become the Michael Jordan that we remember until the 90s. The early to mid 90s, the dream team, in the Olympics was 92. So I think there are just a lot of very young players who we just need to build the narrative up, and we're just in this kind of limbo space right now. And the people, the old guard, like the LeBrons, the Currys, all of that, we don't know how to let them go. At least the narrative doesn't know how to let them go. And this is something that is not talked about nearly as much as I think it should be, because all of those things that I said about gameplay change, about exposure of all of these players and how we see them versus how we saw them in the 90s and all of that, that's not entirely unique to basketball. But basketball has the most noticeable dip in ratings.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is, and I'm going to compare it to football because we just had Christmas Day and both of them were playing, and football just blew basketball out of the water. Basketball has all of these games, like 82 games. So the importance of it's just diluted compared to something like football. It always has been. It has had 82 games forever. But the location and where we're watching these games, where can I watch the Wolves? Where can I watch wherever? It's not consistent. Like, if you want to watch the Wolves, you have to cough up FanDuel Sports Network, which we can get into sports betting and how that's affected the game. But I tried a FanDuel account just for a scotch, and the selling point was we show every single Wolves game, like, period. Well, then came a Timberwolves Nuggets game, or was it a Timberwolves Mavericks game? Excuse me. And they didn't show the game.
Was that one because it was on national TV?
It was on TNT.
Yeah,
and it's
that's
like, okay,
why.
well, are you also going to show it on? I was in Michigan at the time, and it wasn't showing from what I saw, but it was again TNT, so it wasn't like a staple channel for every single household. But that being said, okay, let's back up the bus. You still said you're going to show every single game. Are you going to show that game later? Like what? And I got NBA League Pass because of that. And what they do for the national games is they at least put the game on 3 hours after it aired on national TV. Like, they eventually put it
Okay.
on, and they do that as well with local games. Like, "Oh, we're not gonna show this game on League Pass because it is being broadcast on a local channel." That's fair enough, but we're going to still put this game on NBA League Pass 3 days later. So you will eventually have the chance to watch this game, maybe not necessarily right away, but it's always going to be there. So in a way, it becomes like, okay, a reliable source of where to watch the games. The NBA League Pass app is not perfect by any means, but you talk about, ratings being affected.
Yeah.
It's not like it's easy for everyone to find and access games all the time. Like, where can I watch this game? There's these syndicates going on and rights and what's going on. Like, maybe I shouldn't have said syndicates. That wasn't the right word, but you know what I mean.
I like the way
Like,
you think about it. You're thinking of it like
yeah.
an underground mob. I like that. It's a good way to look at it. That's how I
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've said my piece about that.
Here's what I'm going to say on this, though. I think that is that a possibility that that's the point? Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible, but I think there are deeper things at root here with the NBA. I do think that for better or for worse, right, in the country we live in now, in the politics that we live in now, for better or for worse, the NBA has gotten into bed more politically than any other sport. I think we can say that. And I don't think that served them well. I just don't think it has, because whether you want to admit, that, oh, well, they can get by without it. It's like, well, half the country votes with the party that most of the NBA players don't want to vote for. And when you alienate half the country, you're going to lose guys, right? People are going to stop watching the games. And that's a problem. So that's number one. I don't want to say that that's all of it, but I think that's a part of it, right? Because, I mean, Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan said it for years. In fact, I think it was Jordan who said it first. Like, I don't take political stances because Republicans buy sneakers. And I want them to buy shoes, right? I want them to buy my Jordans, just like I want, the liberal kids out and whatever want to buy Jordans. I want everybody wearing Jordans. So it doesn't matter. I'm not going to say anything that's going to create an issue where people don't buy my product. So I do think the NBA has had some trouble there. I don't think that's everything, but I definitely think that's something. Two, the 3-point line is a killer right now. I mean, every team plays the exact same way. And
Absolutely agreed.
I understand the analytics. I get the analytics. I really do. They're like, oh, well, they got shooting threes. It's like, yeah, I understand that. I understand the analytics. You don't need to explain the math to me. I understand it. But that doesn't mean that just because it may be better or more efficient basketball doesn't mean it's a better aesthetic product for me, the viewer, to watch. It's not. And I like a contrast in styles. Zach and I talked about this a lot on the pod a couple years ago. He said Moneyball, like when Moneyball came out and it was sabermetrics and baseball, it wasn't about trying to reinvent baseball. It was really just about a team that didn't have any money looking for an edge, right? And trying to find it. Well, now everybody's using that system, so there's no edge, right? There's no advantage if everybody's doing what you're doing. And that's the same thing in the NBA. When Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are shooting threes and they're the only team that can really do that, that's looking for an edge. But now everybody's shooting threes. So there's no edge. You know what I mean? So there's nothing unique about it. And the problem is, I know that guys like Towns and Wembanyama and all these players think that, well, I'm shooting threes. That's fun. Look at me. I can make 35% of threes. You're going to be just another guy. Like, do you understand? Like, when your career's over, nobody's going to think of you as a top 50 player. Nobody is. Because the top 50 players win titles. The top 50 players become dominant at their position and they dominate their opponents. And Towns will never do that shooting 23s, or shooting 15 threes a game. Wembanyama will never do that shooting 15. He's playing right into my hands. I would love for him to shoot 23s because at 7'5", he won't overpower me. He's never gonna overpower me on the offensive end. Never. Because he'll never put me in the low block, and I'm never going to have to worry about bringing a double. I don't have to worry about it. I'm just going to be like, oh, fine, shoot threes. If you make 7 of them, great. You're going to miss 14 of them.
And
you
that
shoot
goes
7
into
for 21.
That goes into another point where, if the 3-point attempts are about the same as a 2-point attempt where you're just swamped by guys. And I think that I have to specify swamped by guys. You see people passing it over to the 3-pointer, when they just don't think they can make the shot. Really, it's hard to make a shot from that angle too, percentage-wise. So, I don't know. I think it also makes the game boring because it's not fun. I'm sorry to sound reductive, but it's not fun to watch a bunch of missed baskets over and over and over again for a huge spell because everyone is just trying to do heat checks and trying to do, maybe I can do it this time. Oh, maybe I can do it this time. And it's like, that can't happen. You look at something like hockey where it's really low scoring anyway, but that's just the design of the game. And that's not where the excitement of the game is. Same with soccer, like the excitement of the game while you watch something like basketball is because you're trying to see how many baskets someone can make and how you make them. Like, do you have to fight through to get that basket, or are you just, oh, I'll try this lob, I guess? Or what frustrates me too is people being soft on defense, just standing around or not protecting the rim, or it's like, make an effort.
Yeah.
5 guys are all there are on the court at a time representing your team. So make a difference, do something. And
that's the issue. You hit on it right there.
You just feel tired. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the issue too, is like, so when I say every team plays the same, it's like, all right, every team shoots threes, every team plays drop coverage on defense, and every team just tries to play the game 2 ways, right? So just like baseball. Baseball had the same issue of, well, I'm either going to strike out or hit a 3-run homer. It's like, okay, well, nobody wants to watch strikeouts and home runs. Nobody does. Like, occasionally, you got to get a base hit. Occasionally, you got to get on, draw a walk, get on base, steal a base, bunt a guy over, do some different stuff, right? Because that's what makes baseball interesting. Basketball is interesting when it's like, oh, it's not just penetration kick. It's not just drive kick. There's pick and roll. There's high screen and roll. There's low block. There's low post. There's high low. Oh, there's all this other stuff going on. There's all this stuff going on. Great. That's when the game's fun. That's when the game's really great. It's not that way now. And it's an 82-game season that nobody plays.
Yeah, exactly. And to that point, I watched the U.S. women's basketball team in the Olympics this past year, and I saw them beat Japan in the first round when Japan was just shooting threes after threes after threes. They knew how to make 3-pointers. But you know how the U.S. women's basketball knew how to get the edge? Because they knew how to get in the paint and be creative and get around Japan. That's how you get the edge. Yeah, exactly. Oh, 100%. And make the games easy to find, know where the games are going to be played and make it. That's why I think that Christmas Day suffered for the NBA viewership wise compared to the NFL, is because people aren't as aware about where to watch the NBA as they are with the NFL. Even though the NFL was streaming on Netflix and not everyone has Netflix.
If you really want to shake this up, you really want to shake this up, you say, okay, fine, we're going to start the season on Christmas Day. We're only going to play 60 regular season games. None of them are going to be back-to-backs, and we expect your ass to be on the floor for every single one of those games unless you are injured. But nobody sits for rest. Nobody sits for off days or whatever. Nobody's doing that. You're either playing or you're not. And they'll be like, well, wait a minute. 60 games, we won't get paid the full amount, will we? Nope, that's the thing. An 82-game season is the same way, but now you're going to get prorated that. That's how you fix it. Because I guarantee you, all the guys would be like, whoa, 82 sounds great. Let's play 82. Because I'd really like that $70 million I'm getting every year. I just think they're in a real spot because they've negotiated these TV contracts with Amazon and NBC that are starting up next year. And Amazon's dumped a bunch of money into it, and that's going to help them for a while. But after a while, Amazon's going to come back to the NBA and say, this is, I mean, what are we getting here, guys? Like, there's no money here. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not getting the eyeballs on this product. They don't want the people don't want to watch it. Fox did this with golf. Fox bought the USGA rights for 10 years in 2015. And by 2020, they were dying to get out of it. They were dying to get out because they were like, holy crap, we spent a lot of money to get this product and we don't have nearly the bang for the buck. You know, we don't have nearly the dollars to make this thing worthwhile. And, you know, they sold it back to NBC for 10 cents on the dollar, basically. So I worry that this is what the NBA is going to come to in 5 to 6 years or 7 years, where guys are going to be looking for $800-900 million contracts, and the NBA is going to be like, we don't have it. We just don't have it. I realize that that's what we were paying before, but now we don't have it. Sorry, you know. And then what happens? You know, that's the thing. So that's my issue with sports in general. But the NBA's got a long way to go to get it fixed because the product is hard to watch. And I love basketball. I love basketball. It's just really, really hard to watch right now.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Next up. Oh, wrong button. Better button. Although the drum was good. I'd take the drum. 2024, Allison. Coming down to the end of it. I'm sure you got big New Year's plans. You're going to go out, paint the town, party, because that's kind of your nature. Like to get out there in the city and shake it up a little bit with the people. When you think back, though, to 2024, what are a couple things that come to mind to you? Like, what are going to be the things that we remember when we think back on 24?
This year for me was very much about getting out of the waiting mentality, waiting for things to happen to you. While there is a truth to, you know, like letting the dust settle sometimes with things, you know, being proactive is really where you get the results that you want. And I think that it's going to carry out with a lot of people all over the place. You know, me going to Michigan, that was me being proactive about something that I was sitting around and waiting for, you know, and I did something and I got a job. I want to continue that with 2025. So
I like that. So that now you're moving into 25 real quick. Here's what I think this year is known for. I think this year is when a lot of people said, I'm out of the politics, of the you know, kind of just of the, oh gosh, you know, the worst is going to happen to me. Oh gosh, you know, the sky's going to fall. Because we've been doing enough of that, I think, for 4 years. I think people finally tuned off news stations, tuned off, you know, some of these crazy podcasters and things of that nature, and said, you know what, I'm just not going to do this anymore. Right? I'm just not going to hang on every word of some of these idiots, because like I have to go out and live my life a little bit, and I got to take care of the people around me a little bit more. At least that's what I've noticed in the interim around this area, especially post-election. You know, I've talked to a lot of conservatives and Democrats, and I think everybody alike has decided, they're like, hey, can we just, like, I don't know, go to work, take care of our yard, come home, and like, that's it. Like, can we just do that instead of doing all this other stuff? So I wonder if this election isn't going to be that. I could be totally wrong. We could be right back at it in 2 years, and people are going to be fighting again. And maybe they'll always fight a little bit in 2 years. But I think this was the election for me where I finally just said, you know what? Whatever. You know, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I'm going to vote where I'm going to vote, but I'm not going to sit here and try to twist everybody's arm and post on social media every 6 minutes. I'm just not going to do that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, again, to that point of like not waiting for things to happen, but actually doing something. And doing something is really just a nature of what can you do in the moment? And you can't change the world in the moment. You can't, like, you know, reach to, you know, Capitol Hill or whatever and tell them how to do their jobs or anything. You just can only take care of what you can do in your little life, in your community, and go from there. And I think, yeah, this election really kickstarted that kind of mentality throughout of, okay, whether you like the results or not, this is going to change everyone's life to some extent. So after 4 years of being post-pandemic, post this, post that, of being in survival mode and recovering from a lot, now we get to reevaluate things and say, I'm just tired of panicking and feeling out of control. So I'm going to
Yeah.
do something where I'm a little bit more in control of my life. Let's make that happen.
Yeah, and I think you saw that with people changing jobs or people deciding to stay at a job, right? Where maybe they would have done the mass exodus with teachers or whatever, but then they said, you know what? This is what I do, right? I teach, I take care of kids, I work on this thing. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to make that my priority as opposed to worrying about everything else under the sun. And Lord knows there's a lot to still. Nothing's perfect. It's never going to be like ideal. I long for the '90s. We'll never get them, but I long for them. But I think it's like I could sit here and get old and lose 10 years of my life and wake up and I'm 50 and be like, oh, what the hell just happened? Or I can go out and enjoy the weather and go out and take a trip, or I can go out and do some fun stuff and make this thing feel worthwhile. I think that's what I think the legacy of 2024 might be. On the other notes, it might be the legacy of, well, we learned again that everybody gets 15 minutes, or anybody can get 15 minutes of fame. I think we saw that this summer with Hawk Tua girl, who now is on the back end of a major cryptocurrency issue that she's running into. Her 15's pretty much up, and that'll be pretty much the end of that. Diddy had more than 15 minutes, but it sounds like his is up, and everybody else is up around him. So, I mean, it might be the summer of Cat Williams. It might be the year, 2024 might be the year Cat Williams brought down the dark underbelly of Hollywood music. Is it possible that he gets all the credit when it's all said and done?
I mean, every year is going to just have something happen. And for that reason, I'm excited for what 2025 will bring.
Maybe Cat Williams can come on this podcast and he can bring down a whole nother industry if he'd like to.
Let's just make this statement clear. Change is always going to happen. I think something that we feel in our little lives, and I said that before, but I mean it. Our lives feel little to some of us. Change is so constant and so inevitable for everyone. Even if you feel like you are in the same position as you were last year at this time, you have had different experiences, you have met different people, new things have happened. The same thing is going to happen this time next year. You are going to be a different person. Something I tell myself now these days is you go to bed a different person than you were waking up. That's something that I just have as a mantra of like, that's how constant change is. Like, even if it is just, hey, I did the laundry today. Well, the laundry was not done when you woke up this morning and now it is, like
that's a thing.
Little things that, as you move and do things in life and touch lives, it might feel small, it might feel inconsequential, but it builds up. And it's so exciting to see how these little changes build up in our lives, in our community, and everything. So I love New Year's because I just get excited about what we have seen, like reflecting on the past year and what will happen.
Good call. That's a nice way to think about it. I like that. What are you gonna? What is your? I mean, I guess you're already kind of hitting on it. Your New Year's resolution for 2025. Like, what are some things you want to get accomplished in 2025?
Just having this mentality of if I want to do something, don't wait for it, just do it. And not being afraid to do something, especially as a woman. Women feel this more than men, I think, where we feel like we have to have permission to do something, or we have to have some kind of sign that it's okay to do this thing, or even just like, am I going to do this right? Is this the right way to do something? Like, have a little bit more audacity, I guess, going forward. I want to write a lot more. I thought I would write more than I did in 2024 than I did, but I mean, like, I still hit some milestones. I still wrote things that impacted people, which I'm very proud of. Speaking on this podcast, I mean, last year I was not on this podcast, and the first time I was on here was January 1st or 2nd or something of this year. So already right away, I mean, I'm making moves. Thank you, by the way, for a year of podcast. I enjoy being on it, and hopefully I'll be on more episodes next year. That Oscar pod was great. The peak cinema stuff was great. The sports stuff was great. Yeah.
You might have to guest host for me on Peak Cinema some night. Who knows? We have to come up with our new list for Peak Cinema, so we'll be working on that. It's great obviously having you on, and it's nice having a different voice too, because it's nice to mix it up. I'm always happy about that. That's kind of my resolution, is to continue to do the pod and continue to get different voices on the pod, because I think I learn a lot from different folks. I like having different perspectives. I like people telling me things. Zach, Ryan teach me a lot about sports, but also politics and about history and about things like that, which is great. I love having guys. I haven't had Rickard on in forever, but I need to get him on. Dr. Derek's my guy on 80s TV and culture, and like, he gets it. Like, he's just a smart guy. I like having guys like that on the pod, and I like having you on because you are uber talented. You're well read. You travel the world. You see stuff. You're writing movies and TV show scripts, and you're going to be very famous and successful. So I like knowing that you were in on my pod.
Thank you for the good words.
Yeah, you're in on my pod on the ground floor, so therefore I get to have that as my thing. So that's kind of my resolution, is to do the pod. But I also think, on top of that, I think it's important that I continue to try to work on staying positive every day. And I think sometimes that's really difficult to do, right? That's really difficult when you're teaching and you're coaching, and you want to come home and be down on yourself and be down on what you're doing, but it's important to find the positives in those things, and to continue to work at that and to continue to improve whenever possible. And I think never being satisfied with what you're doing too is enough. Like, I think always trying to get better, always trying to improve is a good thing. So I think staying positive and being willing to say, I don't know that, and I should work on that so that I can get better at it. That'd be good. I also think I need to learn how to cook something.
There you go.
I don't cook, Allison. I don't cook. I got to learn how to cook. Like, I can't cook. I don't got it.
Well, I'll close things off here. I mean, we can.
Yeah, you cook. You can tell us all. You're going to give me a recipe before we leave here? I mean, what do you do?
Well, if you want recipes, you should actually reach out to Ryan. He has some good ideas.
Ryan's the chef, but Ryan always wants to do those weird, like, first you gotta sand down like a garlic piece to nothing.
You gotta simmer something for 2 days.
You gotta simmer this for 7 days. Yeah, you gotta age this in a sous vide for like 7 weeks, and then you put a cover on it for another 8 days, and it's like, nah, pass. I can't do all that. What can I do in a half hour? Come on, give me that. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah. So Kobe Bryant, if we're going to circle around back to basketball to just close, Kobe Bryant, I saw like a little interview from him, and he said, these folks who get up and they want to be a basketball player and they want to be killer, know they have to practice, know they have to be hot shots and really put the work in. Well, if you get up at 10 a.m., you do 2 hours of play, and then you rest for an hour. Okay. And then you're doing another 2 hours of play, and then you rest for an hour. Okay. By the time that you are done and the light, sun's down, how many reps, how many practice sessions did you have versus if you got up at 6 a.m. and then you start doing, 7 to 9 a rest, a 10 to, those kind of increments, you get more increments in. So I'm just looking forward to the idea of the Kobe Bryant schedule kind of idea of like, we're not going to cheat ourselves and our dreams.
Getting up
And
early.
yeah, not even just getting up early too. I mean, like that, there you go. But like not giving up on the discipline needed to make real change that we know we need to make in our personal lives, and also knowing that we can do it. Like gritting our teeth through when things get really hard and believing in ourselves. And that's what I want to carry forward with 2025, of just believing that you can get out of whatever rut you feel like you're in.
Amen.
Yeah.
I co-sign on all of that. Allison, we did an hour. Great job. Good little potpourri. Can't wait to have you on a little bit more in 2025. And
I look
if you
forward to it.
I know. I do too. And we're going to see each other on Saturdays, 2 weeks away from the speech festivities, hanging out once again during Speech Saturdays. You want to read Allison's stuff, go to AllisonWanchoba.medium.com. AllisonWanchoba.medium.com. She's got a whole bunch of stuff that she's put out in the last month regarding her exact thoughts from Kevin Garnett on the Summer Olympics. She's got that stuff out there. She's got her own motivational thing for the end of the year. There's all kinds of good stuff up there that Allison's put together. She's got a big archive, so go check her out and take it from there. And again, continue to and when you're there, when you subscribe to her, you can send her ideas for things to go do. She's going to go watch movies. I think she's going to go see. What are you going to go see now? You have
tomorrow. I'm seeing Nosferatu.
Yeah, so
the Robert Eggers movie. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so you're diving into the new movie stuff. That'll be great. And we'll definitely be hearing from her in the future. So Happy New Year, everybody. From everybody here at the podcast, we want to say I hope you guys have a great New Year. And we'll be back at it again Monday with Zach and Ryan as we break down another week of NFL football. We're finally at the end of this regular season. Jesus Christ. Thank you for everybody for listening in. I do appreciate it. For Allison, this is Tim saying keep your head up. And we'll see you.